Am I wrong for adding my brother to his fiancé? I, 24 male, have a younger brother, 22 male, who's in the closet. I knew he was gay since he was 15 years old, but I never told our parents anything about it because they're pretty homophobic and would probably end up disowning him. However, around 2 years ago, my brother brought this girl home and presented her as his girlfriend. Our parents were pleased with her, but I was confused and later on asked him why he's dating a girl if he's gay. He told me that he's planning to marry a girl for appearances and to have children in order to please our parents. I told him that's a terrible idea and he's just gonna make himself and the girl miserable for the rest of their lives. He then told me he doesn't plan to stay married to her for the rest of his life and just for a while until they have children. After that, he's gonna divorce her and share the custody of kids with her. I told him that's a very cruel plan and that he shouldn't let his parents' expectations dictate the way he lives his life. But he just ignored me and continued to date this girl. Fast forward to last week when I found out that my brother and his girlfriend got engaged and were planning to get married in next year's spring. I called my brother and told him again how cruel he was for leading on that girl and he should try to put himself in her shoes, but he again didn't listen to me. So I contacted his fiancée and convinced her to meet up with me in order to talk about my brother. I then told her all the truth. That my brother is only marrying her in order to have children and that he's going to divorce her as soon as he has them and he's actually into men. She absolutely lost it and told me that I just came up with lies about my brother in order to break them off because I was secretly in love with her. How can people be I wish I had that confidence for some of these people to think that many people are into you. Like, how can you be so cocky? Like, you're so full of yourself. After that, I just let her be and I thought my brother was going to rear me a new one after finding out what I told her. But yesterday my brother called me enraged and went off on me, telling me how I could out him to his fiancée like that and betray his trust. Apparently, after our talk, his fiancée did some digging on my brother and found out that he's been seeing another man behind her back. She immediately broke the engagement off after that and let my brother know that I was the reason she even suspected him in the first place. My brother told me that he's never going to trust me with anything ever again and then blocked my number. So, am I the asshole here? No, honestly, I get family is family, but that poor girl is going to get blindsided later on and it's going to suck and you were just being a good person. I think if you're family or not, you got to do what's right. Always.
Storytime. My boyfriend cheated on me, so I cheated on him with his cousin. So a little background information, I was 18 and a freshman in college. So my boyfriend and I have been dating for 3 years going on 4. And we were pretty much what you call a very toxic relationship. We would break up with each other, then get back together 5 minutes later. I would say that it's all really my boyfriend's fault because instead of spending time with me, he would rather go out to the club and sleep with any whore that he could find. But he would always start an argument with me before he went to the club so that way he had a reason to cheat on me. And he's been doing this ever since we first started dating. I don't know why I didn't take that as a red flag, but I'm a dumb bitch who lacks common sense and is completely blind to red flags. So I started a private Snapchat, but I used it as almost like an OnlyFans. Except it was free. I added a bunch of guys on there and my boyfriend's cousins. His one cousin was my best friend and would low-key hype me up. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how my boyfriend cheated on me, so I cheated on him with his cousin. So like I said, I made this private Snapchat that was basically like an OnlyFans. And I had his cousin on there who was low-key my best friend. And he would low-key always hype me up on my thirst traps. So eventually I sent him a whole nude picture of myself. His cousin had a girlfriend, but neither of us were going to tell our significant others. And I told his cousin that I would sleep with him if he cheats on me again. Well, what do you know? A few nights later, he calls me starting an argument before he goes to the club. So I go to bed, I'm bawling my eyes out, and he calls me at 3 in the morning asking for me to get an Uber for him and some friends. But I hear a girl talking in the back. So obviously I gave him a hard time about it. So he hangs up on me, calls me 20 minutes later, and I hear this girl talking in Spanish in the background. Me being me, I assume the worst. I assume that he cheated on me. So he calls me the next day saying that we need to talk. I go over there. He says he doesn't want to be with me anymore. Life for part 3. Part 3 about how my boyfriend cheated on me, so I cheated on him with his cousin. So like I said, he calls me over to his house. He says that I'm the problem in the relationship. I'm the reason why he cheats on me 24/7. So I'm like, you know what? Whatever. I leave and I go to his cousin's house and his cousin kind of does the deed on me. After that, I leave because I really wasn't trying to do the nasty. So a few weeks later, my boyfriend texts me saying, I need to talk to you, da-da-da. And we're not together at this point, mind you. And he's like, hey, like, I just feel like you're really not being honest with me. Like, I want to get back together, but I feel like you're unfaithful. And I'm like, what the fuck do you mean? You literally cheat on me 24/7. So I give him my phone to go through it. I thought I deleted everything, but I didn't delete a conversation between my best friend and I. So I'm bawling my eyes out, turn on my game face for lying. And I'm like, I swear to God, like, I didn't cheat on you. It was a prank. But he did the nasty with that girl, so I think we're even. So obviously I got back with him and we've been together for 4 years.
Part 2 about how I got caught hooking up with my stepson. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. So like I said, my husband was always traveling for work. So my stepson and I would be alone in the house a lot. One night we were watching a movie and it just happened. After that, we couldn't get enough of each other. He even started skipping class so that he could spend more time with me. We basically turned into boyfriend and girlfriend when my husband wasn't there. When my husband would come home from his work trips, we would pretend like everything was normal. One day after my husband got back from one of his work trips, he found one of his son's socks in our bed. He asked me how it got there, but I told him it probably got stuck in there while I was washing the sheets. A few months passed by and my stepson and I are still hooking up. This is when I realized that I hadn't gotten my period in a few months. My period was always irregular, so I didn't think anything of it. My stepson went to the pharmacy to get me a pregnancy test. It came out positive. But the big problem is that my husband can't have children anymore. How was I going to explain this to my husband when he couldn't have kids? Part 3 is up. Part 3 about how I got caught hooking up with my stepson. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. My stepson and I take the pregnancy test and it turns out it was positive. Well, I told my stepson that his dad wasn't able to have kids anymore. That's when he really flipped out. Then he tells me we should just tell his dad the truth. I told him let's not do anything until we actually confirm that I'm pregnant. We go to the doctor the next day and it turns out I'm not pregnant. But this made me realize that we needed to end the affair. Once we got home, I told him we needed to break things off. He begged me not to and we went to his bedroom. Not even 2 minutes later, his mother walks in. She catches us on his bed. She nearly has a heart attack, calls his dad and tells him everything. She took him out of the house and told me never to see him again. When my husband came back from his trip, he made me promise not to see my stepson again. I told him we should get a divorce, but he said no. Then he confessed to me that he's been having an affair too. Now he doesn't even let me leave the house anymore. I want a divorce. What should I do? Story time about how I got caught hooking up with my stepson. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. My husband actually cheated on his wife with me. I started working at his company when I was 18. We started an affair and I knew it was wrong, but at the time I was very broke. He offered me a wealthy lifestyle and believe it or not, we fell in love. So when he and I got married, I was still 18. He was much older than me. He was 42. Everyone in town, of course, started hating me because I broke up the family. His wife couldn't even see my face. My husband already had 2 kids when we got married. One was 12, one was 15. So they were much closer in age to me than he was. The kids and I got along super well. I was their cool stepmom and we had a lot of fun. When I turned 20, the oldest boy came to live with us. And I think you already know what happens. My husband was always traveling for work. That means my stepson and I would be home alone most of the time. One night we decided to watch a movie and before I knew it, we were making out on the couch. From then, we basically started an affair behind my husband's back. Part 2 is up. Story time about how my boyfriend broke up with me to marry my mother. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. Yes, my boyfriend actually did marry my mom. A little backstory on him. He and I had been dating for 6 months. We decided we wanted to move in together, but neither of us had a job. So we ended up moving in with my mother. A little backstory on my mom. Her and I never got along when I was growing up. I mean, it would get to the point where we would throw hands. Every single week she had a new boyfriend. Most of the time her boyfriends would come live with us and she would pay for everything. She even asked me to get a job so that I could help support her and her boyfriend. I started working at a restaurant. And yeah, I helped her pay for bills. I would even buy her boyfriend his beer. When I got accepted into college, I decided I would move out. After that, I barely spoke to my mom. Fast forward to when my boyfriend and I move in with her. She would wear lingerie around the house and constantly flirt with my boyfriend. I had to tell her on several occasions to cover up and just leave him alone. But here's the thing, it never bothered my boyfriend. In fact, he would flirt back. I thought he was just joking. Until a few months passed and he breaks up with me. Part 2 is up. Part 2 of how my boyfriend broke up with me to marry my mother. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. So like I said in part 1, we moved into my mom's house and she was wearing lingerie all the time. And she would constantly flirt with my boyfriend. My boyfriend was having a really hard time finding a job, but luckily I found a job. So I started working as a personal assistant. The problem is that as a personal assistant, you have to be on call almost 24/7. So I was usually never home and sometimes when I would get home, I'd have to go right back out. This allowed for my mom and my boyfriend to spend a lot of time together by themselves. I would come home and they would be watching movies on the couch together. My mom would always cook him dinner, and then I started finding out stuff. For example, I found out they went to the movies together and they didn't invite me. I only found out because my boyfriend used our joint bank account to pay for the tickets. Sometimes they would order food for themselves and not even offer me any, and they would have beach days. They were spending way too much time together. At first I thought this was good because it meant they got along, but the more my mom dressed provocatively, the more I realized she was trying to seduce him. Then my boyfriend breaks up with me and tells me that I should move out because him and my mom fell in love. Part 3 of how my boyfriend broke up with me to marry my mother. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. So one day my boyfriend breaks up with me and tells me that I should move out. And when I asked him why, he said that him and my mother fell in love. But since I was already suspecting something, it didn't really surprise me. But of course I was still devastated. That's when he asked me if I could move out that same night. Mind you, I don't have any money or even a place to go to. That's when I run over to my mom's room and guess what? She had locked herself inside. The coward didn't even want to face her own daughter. She told me that the best thing for everyone was for me to move out and that she knew I could get back up on my feet. So I grabbed some of my stuff and I went over to my best friend's house. My best friend invited me to live with her, thank God. A few weeks later, my mom invites me to her wedding with my boyfriend. Or ex, I should say. Last I heard, she's doing OnlyFans, and my ex is living off of her. I have a better job, I'm thriving, and have my own apartment. Story time about how I set up my boyfriend to cheat on me so that I could break up with him. Disclaimer, this is not my story time, it was sent to me on Instagram. I'm at the airport, so I'm sorry if it's noisy. My boyfriend and I have been together for way too long. When our relationship first started, I was constantly chasing him. He never wanted a relationship and basically didn't want to commit to me. So basically, he was trying to be an F-boy while he was with me. And of course, I let him do whatever he wanted because I was too afraid to lose him. I didn't want to be that annoying, nagging girlfriend, so I just never said anything to him. Fast forward 5 years. I've had a huge glow up since we started dating. I lost weight, I got super fit at the gym, like I have abs now. I opened up my own nail salon, and I even got myself a car and a house. Well, let's just say that he stayed the same. In fact, he has no ambitions to getting a better job or anything, and it really annoys me. He started talking about getting married, and I was like, hell nah. But I don't know how to tell him that I don't want to be with him anymore. I mean, I love him, but I just don't want to be with him anymore. And because I'm too much of a coward to actually break up with him, I set him up to cheat on me. Found this girl on Instagram, and I told her to DM my boyfriend. He DM'd her back. Part 2 is up. Part 2 of how I got my boyfriend to cheat on me so that I could break up with him. So I got this girl on Instagram to DM him, and this girl was totally his type. Basically, she looked like me, but with blonde hair. So she sent him a little DM. He wasted no time and he got back to her. That same day, they set up a freaking date. So I told this girl that all she had to do was go out with him, like meet him at a restaurant, but that was it. Little did I know that she had a crush on him. And it makes sense now thinking about it because my friend recommended her, and my friend afterward told me that she actually had a crush on him. A few days later, she sends me a picture of him sleeping in her bed without a shirt on. And she basically tells me everything that happened. So now I have all this proof. But guess what? I actually got really pissed. Broke my heart because I didn't expect him to do that. And he was totally avoiding all my calls and messages. He finally came over to my house, and that's when I showed him all of the receipts, all the pictures and messages between him and the girl. That's when he told me that she drugged him and forced him into doing it. Of course, I knew that wasn't true. Then he pulls out a ring and asked me to marry him. That's when he got on his knees and started begging. Part 3 is up. Part 3 of how I set up my boyfriend to cheat on me so that I could break up with him. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. As he's begging on his hands and knees for me to marry him, gets a call from the girl that he cheated on me with. He puts the phone in his pocket and he started acting all nervous, so that's how I knew. That's when I told him to show me his phone. Then he ran to the bathroom and threw it into the toilet. Then he locked himself in my bathroom and basically begged me for 3 hours to stay with him. Told me that he would never be able to find anyone as good as I was, and that he loved me and blah 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 blah. At this point, I told him I was going to call the cops to get him out, but I just couldn't bring myself to it. I really felt bad for him. I mean, after all, I did set him up. He eventually left and I didn't speak to him for a few weeks. A few days ago, I actually started talking to this new guy. He's been super flaky, and every time we decide to go out, he always bails. So now I'm thinking maybe I should take my ex back. He sent me flowers, but I've been trying to ignore him. But my parents don't want me to get back with him. Part of me thinks that he was probably already cheating on me. I mean, he DM'd that girl really quick. I honestly don't know what to do, and I'm even starting to feel guilty about what I did. At the same time, he totally shouldn't have cheated. What do you guys think I should do?
I, 22 male, just learned that my sister, 29 female, had an abortion to be able to donate me part of her liver. It caused her divorce, and I can't stop hating myself. I was very sick 4 years ago and was in need of a liver transplant. My situation was that it was very unlikely that I would get one in time. At that time, my sister was pregnant. I didn't know as it was early and she was only 2 months. My situation was getting worse and my sister decided to have an abortion, and then 2 months later, we did the transplant surgery. I never knew about the pregnancy. All I knew was that she gave me half of the liver. My sister and her husband divorced a year later. I didn't know the truth until yesterday when my mom slipped up about the abortion that my sister had. I asked her about it and she told me everything. She told me that my sister made her promise not to tell me and she failed that promise. My sister was very happy. My brother-in-law was a very decent guy. I knew they were looking forward to having children. They were great together. She always told us about how lucky she is to have found him. Apparently, at the time of their decision, my sister and her husband had great disagreement. He didn't want her to have the abortion and risk the transplant surgery and was hopeful that my situation might sort itself out without my sister's help. The chance was very small, but it was there. My sister didn't agree. They couldn't convince one another, and my sister did things anyway without his blessing. They tried working things out after the surgery. They went to counseling. They even tried to have another baby, but they couldn't get themselves to do it. He couldn't forgive my sister, and she wasn't all that apologetic, so they ended up separating and eventually divorcing. I asked my mom if my sister still thinks that she did the right thing, and she said she's not sure. I can't stop feeling guilty. My sister saved my life, but destroyed her own life by doing it. She had to abort the baby she definitely loved and looked forward to, and did that knowing that it will probably end her marriage as well. I was ready to go at that time. I had accepted my fate and I was at peace. She should have just let me. My brother-in-law should have told me, so I would have talked her out of it. I'm surprised he didn't, and I can't feel anything but hate for myself. I don't know what to do. Should I talk to my sister? What should I tell her? Should I keep my mouth shut and pretend that I don't know? I'm not sure if I'll ever be able to look into her eyes and not show that I know. I just don't know what to do. Please, please help me.
Am I the asshole for yelling at my husband's ex-girlfriend? My 28 female, husband 29 male, and I have been together for 4 years. We have 1 child, 2 female together. His ex, 29 female, has never gotten over their breakup even though it's been 5 years. Also, I met him around 6 months after they broke up. She went through a lot of lengths to break us up and absolutely lost it when we announced our engagement. She showed up to our wedding in a white dress, and we later found out it was because my mother-in-law invited her as a +1. I tried to ignore it and keep the peace until she tried to pour wine on my wedding dress. I lost it and kicked her out. We went no contact with the mother-in-law since that incident and only keep contact for our daughter. His ex-girlfriend is still bitter about him breaking up with her, and she sometimes does things like follow me to the grocery store or follow us on date nights. This Thanksgiving, we had a dinner plan for close family and made the mistake of inviting mother-in-law. She brought his ex, and I tried to be polite and set up an extra spot at the table because I didn't want to be rude. Everything went well until my daughter woke from her nap before dinner and his ex raced to pick her up. She was saying things like, "Mama's here, baby. Don't worry, Mama's here for you," and I felt very uncomfortable. I then attempted to take my daughter back, and she would not let go. She said I should let her have a few seconds from the life she had stolen from her. I saw red and told her she was out of line and needed to leave and not come back.
Am I the asshole for giving my son the same name as an ex and not telling my husband? So, I'm 32 female and my husband is also my age. We met in grad school 9 years ago, got married 5 years ago, and have a 3-year-old son, Isaiah. His name isn't Isaiah, but something like it. Similar and traditional without being overly common for boys in North America. It was recently homecoming weekend and my 10-year reunion from my undergrad. My husband knows that I had one serious relationship in undergrad. It lasted 2 years with someone named Ben. What he doesn't know is that I also dated Isaiah for 6 months after. My relationship with Isaiah was not as serious as it was with Ben, and since I lived away from home, I never introduced my family to Isaiah. I didn't want to concern them with the new relationship either, as I didn't enjoy having to announce my breakup with Ben to the whole family. I never told him because I liked that name as a baby name. So we're in my college town for the weekend and out to dinner. Isaiah walks in with some of his old friends and immediately comes up to us and introduces himself to my husband. Since his name isn't super common, I see my husband almost say, "You have the same name as our son," but he stops himself and I can tell his brain is connecting the dots. We leave the restaurant, and when we're getting ready for bed, he confronts me about Isaiah. I admit to it. I apologize and stress that it wasn't a serious relationship. We were both graduating and didn't want to stay together. I don't think of adult Isaiah when I see our son either. My husband says that if we have a daughter, he wants to name her after one of his exes during the fight. This makes me feel like shit, and I realize I may have been the asshole. So can you guys tell me, am I the asshole here?
Storytime about how I beat up my stalker of 4 years. When I was 18, I booked a major campaign. I started modeling at the age of 10, and it was a really big deal for me. This happened in a country where women are not treated very well. When my campaign came out, there were billboards of me everywhere in the city. My face was plastered on the internet and on social media too. Now from this, my Instagram grew a lot. Overnight, I went from having 6,000 followers to 40,000 followers. So by the end of the week, I had almost 100,000 followers. Again, this was a huge deal for me and I was really happy about it. But things started getting really weird when I started checking my DMs. I had about 40 DMs from one guy alone. The rest of the DMs were thirst traps, but this guy was different. He was becoming obsessive literally overnight. Every other message was about how beautiful I was and how he wanted to marry me. Instead of replying, I decided to ignore his messages. From this campaign, I started getting even more modeling jobs, and I also started getting paid to post stuff on Instagram. I was super happy. When I checked my DMs again, I noticed that he was messaging me even more. Once again, I ignored every single one of his messages. But after 4 days, he started getting really angry. Started commenting bitch on all of my pictures. Got to the point where I had to tell my modeling agency, and they just told me to ignore him too. A few days later, I opened his DMs only to see a picture of my house, and this meant he knew where I lived. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I'm sending me an Instagram. Once again, I told my modeling agency, and again, they told me to just ignore it. But it terrified me that he knew where I lived. Luckily, I lived in a really big apartment building, so I don't think he knew exactly what floor I lived on, but I took a chance and I sent him a message asking him politely to leave me alone. Believe it or not, this went on for 4 years. I would tell him to leave me alone and he would just come back with more things to say. During those 4 years, I did travel a lot for modeling, so it didn't bother me that much. Not until I got pregnant. He actually sent me a picture of me pregnant. That's when he told me that I had betrayed him and that I was cheating on him. One day I'm at my apartment, and yes, I had already met a man at this time and we were engaged. My fiance was out at work. I decided to take some time off of modeling since I was pregnant. Suddenly, I get a knock on my door. I opened the door to a stranger I had never seen before. Obviously, at the time, I didn't know it was my stalker because I didn't know what he looked like. That's when he hands me a package and he tells me that I must have left it downstairs. I told him I hadn't ordered anything, and then he asked if he could come in. Said no, but he pushed his way in. When he grabbed my hand and started begging for forgiveness. And he confessed that he had been sending me the messages for 4 years. Started yelling at him to leave, but he wouldn't. He tried to kiss my pregnant belly and asked me if it was his son. And that's when I just started kicking and punching him. And I didn't stop until he was out the door. When I looked at his face, he was bleeding and scratched all over. Neighbor had come out and had already called the cops, thank God. Cops arrested him and he was taken away. They were only able to hold him for 2 weeks. Apparently he had not broken any laws. This man is out there free. What should I do?
Am I the a-hole for dropping out of maid of honor role last minute because of an emergency? My best friend Chloe was getting married last Saturday, and I was the maid of honor. For 1 year straight, I was the main planner for her and did the best that I could to fit the standards she had set for the wedding. I even planned an amazing bachelorette party for 1 month before the wedding. But I couldn't do this without the gorgeous bridesmaids as well. 2 days before the wedding, my husband had a heart attack and was hospitalized. The doctor said his situation was severe, and he was transferred in an ICU. Later, doctors told me he needs an emergency open heart surgery the next 24 hours. The situation was very life-threatening, and we could lose him any time. My best friend called me to wish me well, and I thanked her. She also asked if the surgery will happen before the wedding, and I said that it will happen the day before, but it will last for many hours. She said, "That's all right. Just making sure it doesn't intervene with the wedding, that's all. It's sad we can't have Ben there, my husband, but we'll have you and you can eat and drink for both of you. Haha." That's when I told her I won't be able to come to the wedding whether my husband's surgery is over or not, because I need to care for him and I want to be next to him until we are all 100% sure he's gonna be fine. She said she understands, but she reminded me that as a maid of honor I have a duty, and it's 1 day before the wedding, so I can't drop out. I said that I am sorry about this, but I almost lost my husband, and I don't want to leave his side yet. She didn't curse me out or anything, but she was very upset and she started crying. She said she understands and wished me well again. My husband's surgery went well, and we were now waiting for his recovery. It was the day of the wedding, and I called my best friend to wish her well. She didn't pick up. Later, a video called one of the bridesmaids and she answered. I asked to talk to Chloe, but she said she's busy getting ready. I said, fine, I'll call later. I called again and again, but no response. I thought she was simply busy with the preparations. I called the day after the wedding and still no response. She wouldn't reply to my text at all. I contacted some of the bridesmaids and they told me that she's very upset with me for dropping out the day before the wedding, and that I should make it work no matter what. Some of them said I did what's reasonable and how my husband's health should be my priority, but some others feel like I let down the bride on her big day, and I shouldn't expect a word from her anytime soon. Am I the a-hole? Long story short, my grandparents are wealthy. My mother is very spoiled and self-centered. Additionally, I believe she likely has a cluster B personality disorder. Every single situation is somehow about her. My dad's side can't stand her because she sows chaos anywhere she goes. For example, my dad's side threw a birthday party for one of my cousins. The whole day was focused on a fight because she spent $8 on ingredients to make a lasagna to bring, then ruins the poor kid's birthday. This is just one example. But this every situation, every time she's the center of everything. Her family's pretty wild. I've been present for multiple fist fights between her and her sisters. Every fight stems from someone getting more money than the other. One time, my mom had a phone cord wrapped around my aunt's neck. Although terrible, it was kind of impressive to be honest, as my mom's a small person. Anyway, despite my grandparents being wealthy, I grew up pretty poor in the beginning. My mom got cut off a few years. Probably had something to do with the phone cord incident. I remember going to food banks for food, clothes for donations, etc. When things did get better, my parents refused to spend any money on me. If I had clothes for school, it was because my aunt bought me an outfit for Christmas. I mean, they were ridiculous with it. My grandfather, dad's side, tried to get custody of me due to neglected alcoholism. As for the wealthy grandparents, look, I'm not entitled. It's their money. But every grandchild except me got their college paid for, got a car, a down payment on a house, and a wedding. Super freaking generous. I was just hurt that I got none of these things. It felt personal. I felt it was their way of communicating that they loved me less, and that damaged our relationship. Fast forward to this week. I'm engaged. I wasn't expecting a big wedding. I was okay with eloping. But I figured my parents might want to do something since I'm their only kid. So I asked them what they wanted to do. Well, my mom was drunk because, it's 2 p.m. Confesses to the 30,000 thing. Then the next day, non-stop pressuring me into taking out a loan. I refused and say, you were given 30,000 for a wedding and a down payment, but you decided vacations and cars were more important. Then the whole thing gets turned into, poor her. Can you believe she won't get to plan a wedding with her daughter because the daughter expects a wedding to be paid in full? What a spoiled witch. Now I have relatives calling me up with this BS. They're under the impression that I'm being a diva. I keep dodging the conversation, but I don't know how long I can do it. Because once my relatives find out, there is no saving her reputation with them. Also, through all of this, found out my grandparents did give money for college. The problem is they gave it to my mom and she spent it. It must have been a decent amount too because my grandparents are under the impression that they paid my college in full. I'm at a loss. I haven't talked to my parents in a week. I know they're my parents and I need to forgive them no matter what, but this is hard. It almost feels like they aren't my parents anymore. That bonding feeling, or whatever it is gone. Sorry that this post was long. It felt cathartic typing this out. Am I the a-hole for not letting my niece borrow my engagement ring? I, 28 female, recently got engaged to the man of my dreams, and he picked the perfect engagement ring. I can't get over how well he did without asking me any questions about it. It even fits perfectly despite neither of us actually knowing my ring size. I was watching my little niece, 6 female, this weekend when she saw my ring. She thought it was really pretty and wanted to try it on. I explained to her that this ring was very special to me and that I didn't want anyone else wearing it. However, I have other jewelry that we could go through together and she could wear if she wanted. She didn't. She just wanted to wear this ring. So she started pouting. I tried to get her to focus on other things and activities, but she was still in a mood about it by the time my sister, 26 female, came to pick her up a couple of hours later. My sister was annoyed and asked why I couldn't just let her wear it for a little bit. I tried to explain, but she said I just don't understand kids. Later in the week, my sister stopped by with my niece to let my dogs out while I was at work. In my line of work, wearing a ring isn't very practical, so I leave it in the ring box by my bed and put it back on when I get home. When I get home, I couldn't find it. I panicked. I looked everywhere I could think of. I called my sister to see if she had seen it while she was there, and she admitted she took it and let my niece wear it for the day. I was fuming. They had gone to the zoo. It could have been lost anywhere. My sister even admitted that they had forgotten it on a table for a few minutes. But I shouldn't be mad because they got it back. I yelled at my sister that she shouldn't have taken the ring when I specifically told her I didn't want my niece or anyone else wearing it, because I was worried about this exact kind of thing happening. I told her that I would find someone else to let my dogs out when I was working, and that she wasn't allowed in my house when I'm not home anymore. She said I'm being unfair to my niece who loves my dogs, and just wanted to feel like a princess for a little while. I'm not mad at my niece, and I don't want to punish her for what my sister did. Am I the a-hole?
Video is probably going to be deemed as controversial, which is so sad that it would, because in reality there shouldn't be anything controversial about the fact that women don't owe you anything. When you call a girl pretty or compliment her outfit or take her out to dinner, that does not mean she owes you anything in return. That does not mean she owes you her phone number or favors in bed or going home with you. And it's sad because half the time the reason a woman won't say no is because a lot of men out there take the word no and the response no as a form of disrespect towards them, when in reality it's not. A lot of times when a girl tells a guy no, it resorts to violence towards the woman, whether that be verbal violence, physical violence, a lot of the times even SA, all because a girl said no. And it all stems from the fact that a lot of men out there think that women owe them something. You can call a girl pretty all you want and take her out to dinner as many times as you want, but that does not erase the fact that women don't owe you anything. So to all those men and women out there, women don't owe you.
Imagine going on a cruise with your family only to end up on the FBI's most wanted missing persons list. This was the fate of a young girl named Amy Lynn Bradley when she went on a holiday family vacation. Amy had just graduated and boarded the Royal Caribbean's Rhapsody of the Seas cruise with her parents and her brother Brad in March of 1998. The family was having a great time together, enjoying all the ship's amenities, and Amy even became friends with the ship's band, the Blue Orchid. On the night of March 23rd, Amy and her brother partied in the ship's club. Amy danced and chatted with the bass player, Yellow, aka Alistair Douglas. Around 1 a.m., the siblings called it a night and returned to their family's cabin together. This would be the last time that Brad ever saw his sister. A few hours later, at 5:30 in the morning, Ron Bradley, Amy's father, saw her on the deck of their family's stateroom lounging peacefully. All seemed well, but 30 minutes later, when he looked again, Amy had vanished. Ron assumed Amy went back to sleep in her bedroom, but when he checked, she wasn't there either. Ron went and checked the ship's common areas, but couldn't find Amy, and the family started to worry. They begged the cruise ship staff to cancel docking at Curacao, but were ignored. Both 2,400 passengers and 765 crew members were allowed off the ship. As the Bradley family continued to desperately search for Amy, the ship's staff remained unhelpful. They didn't want to announce her disappearance or hang photos of her around the vessel, afraid it might upset the other passengers, and they only searched common areas, not staff or passenger cabins. It was possible that Amy might have fallen overboard, but extremely unlikely because she was a trained lifeguard and experienced avid swimmer. That's when her family recalled how Amy was receiving a lot of special attention from the ship's crew. A waiter had asked Amy out to a restaurant called Carlos and Charlie's during the ship's dock to Aruba. However, Amy had rejected this offer and stated how the crew members gave her the creeps. She wasn't wrong to feel this way, as it just so happens another young American woman had disappeared shortly after being seen at that same restaurant in Aruba. The Bradley family did everything in their power to find Amy, but it was like she vanished completely and all the leads went cold. However, the Bradley family never gave up and were hopeful when multiple people in the Caribbean claimed to have seen their daughter over the years. Just 5 months after her disappearance, 2 Canadian tourists spotted a woman who matched Amy's description on the beach with the exact same tattoos as Amy. These tattoos were pretty specific, such as a Tasmanian devil with a basketball on her shoulder, a sun on her lower back, a lizard on her stomach, and a Chinese symbol on her left ankle. She was accompanied by 2 men, and she tried to say something, but the man gestured her away. One of the tourists believes 100% that it was her. The following year, a woman comes forward stating that she's Amy Lynn Bradley at a brothel in Curacao. 1 year after Amy Lynn Bradley's disappearance in 1999, a member of the Navy was in a brothel in Curacao when a woman came up to him and told him that she's Amy Lynn Bradley. She begged for his help, but he didn't report it because he didn't want to get in trouble. The officer stayed quiet until after his retirement when he saw Amy's face on People magazine, but by then she was long gone. That same year, the Bradley family gained a tremendous amount of hope when a man named Frank Jones, claiming to be a former U.S. Army Special Forces officer, contacted them. He stated that he knew exactly where Amy was and he could rescue her from the armed Colombians holding her in Curacao. Jones even had a witness statement from a cook who told the family that Amy was being held in a complex protected with barbed wire. The cook described Amy's tattoos and even hummed a lullaby that Amy's mom used to sing to her daughter when she was a baby. However, this all later turned out to be a complete fraud. Jones managed to scam the Bradleys out of over $200,000 with his charade of getting their daughter back. It turns out that all the evidence he showed them was made up, leaving the Bradleys back at square one. However, the sightings of Amy didn't stop. In 2005, the Bradleys received an email with a picture of a woman who appeared to be Amy, lying on a bed in her underwear. A member of an organization that locates sex trafficking victims on adult websites noticed the photo and thought it was Amy. She was identified as a woman named Jazz, a sex worker in the Caribbean. Unfortunately, this clue never generated new leads, and to this day, Amy Lynn Bradley remains missing. She continues to be listed on the FBI's most wanted missing persons list. Her family, however, has never given up hope and have offered sizable rewards and information on her whereabouts.
Would I be the asshole by not telling a guy I've been dating for a month that I'm having artificial insemination to be a single mother? Prior to lockdown, I decided to be a single mother by choice. The journey to accepting this has taken 2 years and included counseling and a very thorough plan to ensure I could do this alone. Right before I was due to have artificial insemination with the donor sperm, the pandemic hit and treatments were canceled. There was no timeline for when things may reopen. For a few days, I was devastated as I was so mentally prepared for this, and then I picked myself up and decided to park my plan. After all, I didn't have a choice. I downloaded a dating app out of curiosity and figured that I could still chat to guys and see what happened without having any expectation. I've been talking with this guy, let's call him G, and it's only been a month, so very early stage. However, we've met up twice and spoken many times on the phone. And I get a really good feeling from him. For the first time in years, quite frankly, I feel emotionally connected with the man and it feels completely natural and promising. During this time, my clinic called me to say they have an approval to open and do I wish to go ahead this month with my treatment. I want to be a mother more than ever, so I said yes, and now I'm on medication with my appointment set for next week. While there's no guarantee I'll get pregnant on the first go, I have a conflict in mind about informing G of my plan. On one hand, it's at such an early stage of our romance without yet being anything committed that I feel like I'm bringing something up prematurely. On the other hand, I wonder what may happen as time goes on. Am I just delaying the inevitable? Is it deceptive of me not to inform him of something so fundamental in my life? A friend told me that I'd sabotage a potential relationship with him by telling him of this plan right now, and that a man who is really into me will accept me even if I'm pregnant, and that more time is needed for him to really get to know me. But in my mind, I'm wondering if it will piss him off by suddenly saying, hey, I'm pregnant by the way. Spoken loosely about wanting kids in the future, so I know he'd like a family, but it was a brief passing comment. I'm also not willing to wait to get into a long-term relationship, and we are far too early and to be thinking about a family together.
Story time about how my best friend waxed off my eyebrow in my sleep, so I cut her hair. So a little background information. I was 14 and in 8th grade, and my best friends and I were having a sleepover. And right before we had went to sleep, we were all talking about this one TikTok trend that was going around. It's like this trend where girls would go and put wax on their boyfriends while they were sleeping and then take it off. Well, I didn't think anything of it, so that night I went to sleep. I should have knew this was gonna happen because I'm always the butt of the joke whenever it comes to our friend group. Like, I'm always the one getting picked on. Like, there was this one thing that my friend Ashley saw online. It was like, if you put white nail polish on your teeth, it would make your teeth whiter. So who did they decide to try it out on? Yup, me. And yes, I could have said no, but these were my best friends. I didn't think that they would intentionally hurt me. Anyway, so like I said, I go to sleep and all of a sudden I wake up in the middle of the night to something very, very, very hot on my face. I open my eyes and all of my friends are standing above me with their flashlights on. So like I said, went to sleep, didn't think anything was gonna happen, and then I wake up and all of them are standing above me with their flashlights on. And then I realized that Ashley has a stick in her hand. Once I realized that there was wax on the other end of the stick, I started screaming. So then Kelsey decides to cover my mouth. She's like, shh, it's not that bad. I promise. Like, don't worry. I get up real quick. I run to the bathroom and there's like this pink transparent wax on my eyebrow. It was about 3 a.m. and we're all sitting there trying to find ways to get this wax off of my fucking eyebrow. Well, then Amber goes, I'm tired of this, grabs it and rips it off my forehead. So I'm crying at this point. Like, I'm in 8th grade. I'm about to have my glow up and y'all gotta ruin it with taking my eyebrow off. So nobody went to sleep for the rest of the night because they thought that I was gonna do something to them. So I acted all cool. I was like, no, it's fine. I can just draw it on. When in reality, I was going to cut this bitch's hair. So like I said, nobody went to sleep for the rest of the night. I acted like it was okay because I was plotting in my head that I was going to cut one of their fucking ponytails off. So I go over to their house next week, and every single day that week they were telling me how good my drawn on eyebrow looked. It didn't actually look good, and none of my hairs were growing back. So around 12 o'clock, all of us are ready to go to bed. I'm laying down pretending that I'm sleeping, and they think I'm sleeping, so they're over there talking shit about me on her bed, Ashley's bed. I wasn't sure which one's eyebrow I should rip off because the one ripped off my eyebrow, but then the other one put the wax on my eyebrow. They were like, she's sleeping. I don't think she's gonna do anything. She doesn't even have the balls to do anything. So around 4 in the morning, everybody is dead asleep. I get up and Ashley had her hair in a ponytail. So that was easy enough. I grabbed a pair of scissors out of my book bag and I cut her hair off.
Am I the a-hole for refusing to pay my parents' rent money? I turned 18 about a month ago. The day after my birthday, my parents sat me down and told me they want me to pay rent while I lived at home. I was a little confused. I have 3 older siblings, and the deal for them was that they could live at home for free while they were studying, even when they were several years older than I am. Now, I can only work weekends because of college, so I make about 500 euros a month. And after paying for tuition, health insurance, mandatory, and my phone bill, I have about 300 euros left, most of which I try to save. So I asked my parents how much they want. 100 a month? Maybe 200. But no. They want me to pay market value to rent a room, which is in the city where I live about 500 euros. Now, I think this is ridiculous for 2 reasons. One, my parents' rent for the entire house is 600 a month. I would have understood asking for 1/3 of that. But for me to pay 84% of that alone seems excessive. And 2, none of my siblings paid rent, even if they were older or had better paying jobs. Not to mention that my parents didn't give me any warning. If I had known beforehand, I'd have looked for a room when college started. I explained that I have to make almost 800 a month just to be able to pay for everything, and even more if I want to save anything for unexpected expenses, /school books, /actually moving out, which would be really hard to do while going to college full-time and commuting back and forth. They just told me to take out some student loans. I told them I'm not okay with paying that much, and that I would look to move out as soon as possible, so I wouldn't be a financial burden to them. I think I found a room, cheaper than my parents offered, and will probably move out in a week or 2 if everything goes right. But I haven't paid this month's rent. Am I the a-hole? Am I the a-hole for not letting my ex have a relationship with his child? I know the title is awful, but I'm trying to be quick and couldn't think how better to phrase it. When I was 18, I was in a relationship that was, in hindsight, full of red flags, the biggest being he was 29. We split after 4 months because he cheated and gave me an STI. Then during treatment for the STI, I found out I was pregnant. I personally am against terminating, so I wanted to keep the baby. I told him and he made it clear he didn't have to be involved. And my father, a lawyer, drafted a contract that we both signed basically giving up his rights to the child. The whole time, he was vehemently against me having the baby. I'd made multiple MySpace videos going on about how I shouldn't be able to keep the baby without his permission, and I was a witch, and so on. Once the contract was signed, I basically never heard from him again until this year. He found out recently that he was infertile, and now he and his wife of 10 years want to build a relationship with my son. He isn't allowed to contact my son without permission, and I have refused. My son adores my husband, and it will devastate him to find out that his real dad didn't want him. Am I the a-hole for not letting my ex have a relationship with his son? All I can think about is the hateful things he said about my son and I before my son was born. And now the only reason he's reached out is that he can't have other children. I don't think I'm the a-hole, but I feel really conflicted. Edited to add, my son is almost 15. He does know that my husband isn't his dad, and we went through therapy for it when we told him at 11. But he very much considers my husband to be his dad and our daughter to be his sister, and hasn't shown any interest in finding out about his biological father. Obviously, if he wants to know, I won't lie to him. But right now, he is happy with his family as it is, and hasn't shown any interest in hearing about my ex.
So today's story time all takes place back in 2012. Now, in 2012, I was definitely old enough to not need a babysitter. Everybody in my age group was pretty much old enough to not need to be supervised by a babysitter if their parents weren't home. But my friend, on the other hand, let's just call this friend Jimmy. Jimmy was a little bit of a bad kid, and his parents were going out of town for spring break. Now, you're probably wondering, Austin, why the hell are his parents going out of town for spring break? Like, what are they, 20 years old? Yeah, that's what I thought too. When Jimmy told me his parents were going out of town for spring break, the first thing I said was like, dude, are your parents in their 20s? Like, why the fuck are they going to party for spring break? He's like, dude, they both work at a school, so they get off for spring break, and they're going to celebrate. And I was like, damn, your parents are definitely living shit up. He's like, I know, man, and the worst fucking part is I'm getting a babysitter for the entire week. I was like, so wait, let me hear this straight. You're going to be home all spring break, off school with no parents, but you're going to have a babysitter? He's like, yeah, dude, don't fucking remind me. I was like, that fucking sucks. He's like, I know, dude. If you want to hang out at all this week, like, please, like, invite me over, because I don't want to be there with her. Like, I don't know who this is. I've never met her before. I don't want a damn babysitter. I'm old enough to be on my own. And while that was true, he was definitely old enough to take care of himself. But like I said just a second ago, Jimmy was a little bit of a shithead. He definitely got into trouble more than the average kid did. And so did I. And I think that's why me and Jimmy were such good friends back in the day. So anyway, fast forward to spring break starting. I was home all week, just playing Xbox, doing what I usually do. Jimmy would hop on Xbox every other day and just be like, dude, I fucking hate this. Like, my babysitter's a psycho. She won't let me leave my house. Like, she's ridiculous. And then I would be like, dude, why don't you come spend the night at my house? He's like, no, dude, you don't understand. I can't go anywhere. Like, if I try to go for a walk, she won't let me leave. If I try to go to another friend's house and ask her if I can go, she'll say no. Like, I can't go anywhere. I was like, can you have friends over there? He's like, I don't know. Let me ask her. And he gets up, and he comes back like 5 minutes later, and he's like, yeah, you could come over if you want. I was like, fuck it, man, I'm down. He's like, you sure? I was like, yeah, why not? Because I thought about it for a second, and I'm like, you know what? She's probably not that bad. Like, she's probably just strict or something, like, whatever. So I go over to his house, and immediately upon meeting this babysitter, I was like, oh, she's definitely really strict. Like, the minute I got there, she was like, hi, Austin, nice to meet you. I'm babysitting for Jimmy. Just so you guys know, bedtime is at 1 a.m., no later. And that's when I was like, dude, what? Like, bedtime, bro? Like I said, 2012, we were old enough to be not having a fucking bedtime. Like, you know what I mean? So I just kind of thought about it. I was like, you know what, whatever. Who cares? I go to bed at 1 a.m. usually anyway. I don't really give a fuck. So me and Jimmy go about just going to the basement and playing Xbox like always. And then fast forward to about 11 at night. This is when shit gets weird. This is really when the story time starts, okay? 11 at night, we're just like playing Xbox like we normally do. And all of a sudden, we see something run by one of the basement windows. Like, something or somebody ran by his basement window fast as fuck. And I look over at Jimmy, and he looks over at me. And he was like, dude, did you see that? I was like, yeah. He goes, what the fuck was it? I was like, homie, I don't know. He's like, shit, all right, let's go tell the babysitter. And he runs upstairs as fast as he can, yelling her name. And he keeps repeating it. And he can't find her. So I run upstairs. I help him look for her. She's nowhere in the house. We check every room in the entire house, and she's gone. And I'm looking at him, and he's looking at me. And he's like, dude, this is fucked up. He's like, why would she just be gone? Like, she wouldn't just abandon us. She's literally paid to stay here. I was like, I don't know, dude. Like, maybe she's, like, running an errand quick. Like, we're old enough to be on our own. She's probably just at the store or something. He's like, nah, dude, this is weird. So he looks outside in the backyard where we saw the running object or person or whatever the hell it was, and he sees a dark figure walking around his backyard holding a weapon, like a giant weapon of some sort. And he immediately runs over to me, grabs me, goes, put your shoes on. We have to go right now. Somebody's in my backyard with something. I was like, what? He's like, dude, I saw something walking around back there. They had a weapon or something. We need to go now. I was like, are you sure it's not the babysitter or something? He's like, no, dude, like, I don't think so. Why would she be doing that? And I'm like, dude, I think you're just being paranoid. So I walk up to the window, and I look back there in the backyard, and he was right. There was somebody just, like, strolling around real slowly in his backyard, wearing all black, and had some sort of, like, thing in their hand. And they were wearing different clothes than what the babysitter was wearing. Like, she was wearing a very, very, like, light-colored jacket when I met her, and a light-colored pair of pants. This person was wearing all black, like, sweatsuit type shit, and the hood was up, so I couldn't see who it was. But it did not look like the babysitter. So at that point, I turn around, I run over to him, and I'm like, yeah, let's get the fuck out of here. And we run away. We literally run away from his own house. So we run all the way up his street onto some main road, and at that point, Jimmy grabs his cell phone. He had this like really shitty flip phone that his parents gave him for emergencies, and he calls the babysitter's cell phone number, to which she doesn't answer. It goes straight to voicemail. And then he tries to call up his parents, and they don't answer immediately either. And I'm like, dude, call the fucking cops. There was somebody walking around your backyard with a weapon or something. Like, this is for the cops, not your parents. He's like, no, dude, like, I don't want to overreact. I'm like, dude, what do you mean overreact? Like, you just saw someone in your backyard walking around in all dark clothing, hood up, and had some sort of thing in their hand that looked like a weapon. Like, I don't think it would be overreacting if he called the cops. And right as I say that, his phone starts ringing, and it's his parents calling him back. So he answers it, he puts it on speaker. He's like, Mom, Dad, I can't find the babysitter anywhere, and like, there's some person walking around our backyard wearing all dark clothing, and they had some sort of weapon in their hand. And they're like, what? What the fuck? Are you serious? And he's like, yeah. And then he tells them where we are, and that like we're far away from the house. And they tell us to hang tight, stay right where we are, and that they're calling the cops. So a few minutes later, the cops were already at the house. The police station was like right down the street, and 2 cop cars pulled up right outside his house. And we approach the house where the police are, and we tell them who we are, and we're just waiting there as they like inspect the house and like, look around the backyard, and they don't find anything, including the babysitter. She's still missing, and her phone's going straight to voicemail still. And at this point, I'm worried. I think his babysitter got kidnapped or some shit. I'm like, dude, what is going on? Like, this is weird. So the police like fan out and start looking all around the neighborhood for this babysitter or for this dude that was in the backyard. They're just looking for anything, basically. So we're just hanging out outside my friend's house with these cops, just like talking to them. And there's other cops patrolling the neighborhood and stuff. They're calling in like backup and shit, looking for this dude or this babysitter. Like, they're just trying to figure out what's going on. And like 30 minutes later, one of the cop car SUVs pulls up, and the babysitter is in the back seat of the SUV in handcuffs. And I noticed she's wearing all black hoodie, all black sweatpants, has the hood up, just like the dude we saw in the backyard. And the cop pulls up, he rolls down the windows, and he's like, is this her? Is this your babysitter? And my friend's like, yeah. And he goes, we just found her down the street walking around with a baseball bat. And that confirmed it. Like the clothes she was wearing, holding a baseball bat, she was the fucking creepy figure in the backyard running around. So anyway, we come to find out just a few moments later, she was on shrooms and acid. They found both of those things on her in her pockets. She was tripping absolute balls, and she was running around because she was hearing noises, and she thought someone was trying to break into her house. Like, listen, I'm not someone that's going to judge somebody for doing what they want to do with their life, but like if you're babysitting 2 kids and it's your job to like keep them safe, you probably shouldn't drop a bunch of psychedelics and then run around outside with a baseball bat. So anyway, the story time doesn't end there. Jimmy's uncle comes over because he lived like down the street, and they obviously needed to talk to some adult or something. And yeah, Jimmy's uncle comes over. The parents were also on the phone, Jimmy's parents, and they got the babysitter's parents on the phone as well because she was only 17, and her parents drove down. And they're like, what are you doing? Like, this is your job. You're ruining it. And what ended up happening was the babysitter got escorted home by her parents. Even though they found shrooms and acid on her, and she had a baseball bat roaming around, she didn't go to jail or anything because she didn't hurt anybody, and she was just tripped the fuck out of her mind, and she was 17. So what ended up happening was that she got escorted home, and the next day when she wasn't tripped the fuck out and seeing and hearing shit, Jimmy's parents called her up and fired her because obviously they didn't really trust her around their son anymore because not really the best babysitter. But she didn't get arrested or anything, which I guess is good for her. And she probably learned her lesson about taking a shit ton of psychedelics while babysitting. Definitely not a good thing to do, and very much not okay. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I've never seen her since. Jimmy hasn't seen her since. And his parents never hired another babysitter again because, well, they figured Jimmy was safer on his own. But yeah, guys, moral of this story is, if you're a babysitter, you should not do what Jimmy's babysitter did in this story time at all. But yeah, I can't lie. I was kind of relieved to find out that it was her all along, roaming around the backyard, running around with a fucking baseball bat, because it could have been a lot worse. It could have been someone trying to break in or something.
Am I the a-hole for paying my niece $50 for the birthday cake she made for my son's birthday? My 16-year-old niece Judy is into bakery. She bakes plenty of sweets and cakes. Due to my brother and his wife's financial situation, Judy got dropped out of cooking academy. She was heartbroken over this, especially because she was on top of her class. She was determined to go back to cooking academy, so she started selling stuff she bakes online to be able to afford her classes. Her parents thought cooking academy was a distraction from school and disapproved of it though, so they started demanding she bakes for neighbors and friends for free. My son's 4th birthday was last week. I asked Judy if she could bake a cake for $50. She agreed, but my brother said no chance, and swore up and down that she will do it for free. Judy said if she keeps working for free, she'll no longer be able to afford the academy, not to mention the ingredients. I said I have no issue paying, but my brother said we're family and the cake was for free. This didn't sit right with me, so I went behind my brother and his wife's back and gave Judy the $50 before they left the party. Well, they found out and yelled at Judy for accepting the money. Then my brother called saying I shouldn't have paid her, but I said she deserves the money for her efforts. But he went on about how unacceptable it is for family to pay for favors, and said that Judy got grounded for acting so entitled. I had an argument with him and told him to stop the punishment, but he said we wouldn't be dealing with us if I didn't go behind his back and gave Judy the money in the first place. I hung up and met up with my family to discuss this, and they all agreed that I should never have sneaked my niece the money and disrespecting her parents' wishes. They told me that I don't even get to speak ill of my brother because he was just trying to be generous with me and was being a real family. I don't know. I feel I might be the a-hole for this. Am I the a-hole for telling my mother she will not see her grandchild? I, 33 female, recently found out I am expecting. My husband and I are delighted, and everybody's delighted for us. This will be our first child and my mother's 64 female third grandchild, as sister 31 female has 2 kids. When we announced we were expecting, my mother decided she had to take charge, giving me names, telling me that she should take care of the baby as I wouldn't know what I was doing, etc. Now, I am very low contact with mother. I actually moved away from living in close proximity with her due to my dislike towards her. Without boring you all with detail, my upbringing was not abusive on the physical side. However, I was emotionally drained, and I had such relief the moment I moved out of her house. I won't get into the history, but my sister got everything her way. Could freeload whilst I had to be working from age 16. Pay my own way by giving up 60% of my wage. I had to get a full-time job whilst continuing my education, funding everything myself. I do not resent my sister for this, and we have a fantastic relationship. The rest of my family did not talk to my mother, with my sister the only one who remains in contact. Even then, my sister will consistently complain to me about her, to the stage now where her kids will not be with my mother unsupervised. With my mother, it is her way or no way, and will give you the silent treatment until she gets her way. Even my nephews joke about the way my mother is. The times she reaches out to me, it's when she needs money. As she is my mother, I was previously supporting her, and as it stands, she owes me £47,000 over a 5-year period. My in-laws are moving closer to us for the birth of their first grandchild, and I want them to be super involved. My mother-in-law is more of a mother to me than my own. 2 days ago, a post on Facebook came out which made me react extremely fast. A young girl at her work, care home, had passed an NVQ. My mother posted that she was extremely proud and Stacy's more of a daughter to me than my eldest. I'll admit, I saw red, and I told her until she could accept me for who I am, I will not be speaking to her again. To which she responded that I had been a disappointment all her life, and she asked if the unborn child is even my husband's as she knows I secretly work in prostitution. I don't. But again, I am not telling her my job title nor how much money I make. I was livid and told her she would never see her grandchild or me again. She's been blowing me up, calling me an a-hole, and having her friends also contact me, claiming how cruel I am and what a horrible thing for a daughter to do. I don't think I'm the a-hole here, but I'm wondering, what do you all think?
This story time takes place in my final year of high school. This story time is definitely one of the craziest things that I had happen during high school. So today's story time all takes place, like I said, last year of high school. It was towards the end. It was right before I officially left school to pursue YouTube. And school, things weren't going that good, to be honest. I can't lie. My grades were definitely slipping. I was focusing more on YouTube than I was at school. And a lot of my teachers at this point were kind of fed up with me. They weren't happy that I wasn't trying in class and that I was getting bad grades. But I had this one teacher. Let's just call her Mrs. Smith, okay? Mrs. Smith was my English teacher, and for some reason, she was just so chill about everything. Me and my friends never could understand why Mrs. Smith was so unbelievably chill about everything. Like, you get a bad grade, she'll sit you down and be like, hey, please just try harder. I can work with you. Like, we'll get you a better grade. Or, like, if you're, sleeping in class, she'll wake you up real gently and just be like, hey, can you please stay awake? Or, like, even things that are worse. Like, one time my friend got caught skipping class, and she didn't give him a detention or anything. She was just like, hey, don't do it again, please. Like, Mrs. Smith was just so nice. And we always had this theory that she would, come to school high. That was our theory. We're like, there's no way she's this nice. Like, she's got to be high on something. Like, she's just too nice. Now today's story time is about Mrs. Smith, okay? The story time all starts off as a normal day. I got to high school, I went to my locker, got my things out of my locker, started my day like usual, and fast forward all the way to Miss Smith's class, okay? I walk into her class, I sit down at my table, I'm with my friend, we're just talking, and the bell rings, and everybody's in class except Miss Smith. And I thought that was weird. I was like, why is our teacher late to her own class? That's like usually not how this works, you know? It's one thing if the students are late, but like usually the teacher isn't late. And I remember my friend looking over at me. He's like, don't worry, she's probably just smoking a J before class. Because like I said earlier, we would always joke and say she was high because of how chill she was. And I started laughing and he laughs and I'm just like, all right, well, you know what? I'm going to go to the bathroom. She's not here to say no, so I'm just going to get up and go to the bathroom. I'll be back in like 5 minutes. And my friend's like, fuck it, I'm going to come with you. I was like, okay. So we leave the classroom, we start walking to the bathroom. And at this point, we weren't really going to the bathroom because we had to. We were just bored. Our teacher wasn't in class. And we found it to be like the perfect opportunity to kind of skip some class. We weren't going to skip the whole class, obviously, but just a little bit at the beginning, you know, kill some time. So we decided to just do a couple laps around the school hallway. And after like 2 or 3 laps, we go into one of the bathrooms. And the minute we walk into the school bathroom, it immediately reeked like weed. Like the first thing I smelled when I walked in that bathroom was just like a bunch of weed smell. And I look up in the air and I can see little bits of smoke by the light. And I was like, okay, someone definitely is either smoking weed in here or just smoked weed in here and left. And my friend looks at me and he's like, dude, someone's definitely getting high in here. And we can see under one of the stalls that there's legs, like someone's standing in one of the stalls. And they look like girl shoes. Like they weren't like sneakers, they were like high heels. Like it looked like a teacher's legs. And my friend looks at me and he's like, what the fuck? Like this is the boys' bathroom. What is the teacher doing in here? I was like, I don't know, man, whatever. So I washed my hands, and I was kind of sitting there looking at myself in the mirror, just like fixing my hair, trying to kill some time. And all of a sudden, the bathroom stall behind me swings open, and my teacher, Mrs. Smith, is standing right there. And I turn around, and I look at her, and she looks at me. She's like, Austin, what are you doing in here? I was like, I could ask you that same question, Miss Smith. What are you doing in here? She's like, oh, just going to the bathroom. I was like, you do know this is like the boys' bathroom, right? And it's a student boys' bathroom, not even the teacher's one. She's like, oh, really? I was like, yeah, you didn't know that? She's like, no, I didn't. And she looks fucking geeked. Like, her face, she looks like she just smoked a whole damn blunt to the face. Like, she was gone. And my friend just goes, all right, I'm just going to say what everyone's thinking. Miss Smith, are you high right now? Like, it smells like weed, there's smoke in the air, and you look fucking blasted, to be honest. And we all just kind of look at each other in, like, pure fear, because we don't know what's about to happen. And Miss Smith just bursts out laughing. She's like, oh my God, like, I'm so embarrassed. And I interrupt her. I'm like, wait a minute. You're actually, like, stoned right now in the middle of school? And she's like, don't tell on me, please. I was like, Miss Smith, I'm not going to tell on you. But, like, holy shit. We've been joking about you getting high for, like, a year now. And it's true. We thought it was, like, a joke. But you really do be getting high. That's how you're so chill. And once again, she just laughs. And she reaches into her pocket and she pulls out one of these little vaporizer things. And I was like, wow. And she's like, yeah, please don't tell anyone. I was like, you don't got to worry about us telling anybody, but, like, be careful because there's definitely some people in our class that would probably narc on you. And she was like, oh, yeah, don't worry. Like, I'll be careful. And I was like, you know you have a class right now, right? Like, you have our class. She's like, yeah, I was trying to hurry up, but my thing wasn't working. My little vaporizer was broken, but I got to work. I was like, yeah, clearly. And we all start laughing again. And we all walk back to class together. And Miss Smith was fucking gone. So anyway, yeah, we walk back to our classroom after this, all together as a group, and walking back into class was definitely hilarious. We walk into class, and my friend looks at Miss Smith, and she looks at him, and he goes, hey, Miss Smith, can me and Austin sit with our other friend group at this other table? And she's like, yeah, sure. Motherfucker was using her being high as an advantage. He was asking her to sit with our friends because she would usually say no, but she said yes because, yeah, obvious reasons. So anyway, we sit down at the table with our friends, and, you know, usually we'd have to be in our assigned seats, but today we didn't have to for, like I said, obvious reasons. And we sit down, and one of our other friends is like, hey, like, why are you guys sitting over here? Like, we have assigned seats, right? And I was like, nah, not anymore, I guess. And he goes, what? How'd you get her to say yes? And my other friend, the one that was with me in the bathroom, looks at him and goes, long story, bro, I'll tell you later. And we went through the rest of that class, had an awesome class, hung out with our friends, just got our work done. Miss Smith was chill as usual, for obvious reasons. And yeah, after class was over, me and my friend, we were walking out of class. She winked at us. Miss Smith winked at us because obviously we knew something that no one else in the class actually knew. And it was just a funny mind fuck of a day, to be honest. Now, we never ended up telling anybody else about this. Like my friend said, he would tell our other friend later on, but we never told him. We just lied to him and said something different. And we didn't tell anybody because honestly, Miss Smith was a really, really awesome individual, and she was a really great teacher. Like, despite her being blasted, she was actually really good at teaching, even when she was high. So, like, we had nothing but respect for the lady, and we didn't want to, like, put her job in jeopardy by, like, telling other people what she was doing. Even though it was kind of stupid to be smoking at school or vaping at school, whatever she was doing, we didn't want to jeopardize her career and risk losing her as a teacher.